Timer. What's up, everybody? How's everybody's Tuesday night? We got David. He'll be here in a second. He's doing the last couple minutes. What a week. What a week. Week 4 was some good games, man, this week. What week 5 going to be like? That's the question. As soon as David gets here, we're going to get everything rolling. If you guys could do me a favor, like this video, share it to some groups, wherever you guys want. We appreciate all the shares and likes. Comment too. It might take us a second to get to your comment, but as soon as I see it, I'll definitely read it off. About those Lions, all you Lion fans, we did it. Thursday night, Lambeau. It's Victory Tuesday. Okay, I'm just gonna run down about it. So let's recap Thursday night. What a game between Detroit and Green Bay. I want to give it up to Green Bay fans. That was a game, man. I thought it was going to be a nail biter. I really thought it was going to come down to a touchdown. I was not 100% confident that the Lions were going to go in that game and dominate it. Like, I had all faith that we would win the game, but I expected it to be a lot closer. I mean, Jared Goff throws that opening pick. I'm like, here we go. That sets love in the right there at the 30-yard line. Perfect chance to score. Defense stuffs the ball, hold them to a field goal, and then after that, it was like lights out. Green Bay didn't do shit. The Lions just dominated from the beginning to the end. I think that's, I mean, like last year we dominated in the last game, but Thursday night, I think it was even a step further than the last game we played in Lambeau. The crazy thing is, I just want to say all these Packer fans, all the shit talking, all coming, every group I went to, Packer fans were like, oh, we're going to beat Detroit, da-da-da, love this, love that. Always bringing up the past. Let's be real, the Packers have owned the Lions throughout the history. But in the last 10 years, mind you, we play 2 games a year. Thursday night, going to Thursday night, Lions have won 10 and lost 10. We were literally neck and neck in victories and losses going into Thursday night game. For the first time in my life in the last 10 years, the Lions hold 11 wins, 10 losses. Now, don't get me wrong, they don't take the history away from the Green Bay Packers and the dominance on the North. But they don't tell you that the Lions, for the first time in a lot of our lifetimes here, are starting to change shit right in front of our eyes. If you told me in the last 10 years the Lions would hold 11 wins and 10 losses and be leading the season series for the last 10 in the last 10 years, I would probably told you you're full of shit. So keep talking on that, Packer fans. Don't get me wrong. I'll give you credit. Love looks like he could be a decent QB. He don't throw a lot of picks. He makes pretty smart decisions, even though we did get a pick 6 off of him. And we got 2 interceptions, but both of those interceptions could have been our guy just made a play. They weren't bad picks. They weren't horrible passes. So he's pretty smart with the ball. You definitely have a shot at the wild card, depending on how the rest of NFC looks. But you're not going to dominate the North like you're used to dominating the North. That's a fact. There's a lot of trouble in the North for some teams. We could go on. But overall, on the Thursday night game, it was a hell of a game. I'm just trying to kill time here to, like I said, to my co-host gets here. Also, I'll tell you it's not an excuse because it don't matter. So don't twist my words here now. But how many people, we'll be honest right now, who else seen that clock at 0:00? right before the Packers scored the first touchdown. I want to know, was it just me or did other people see the clock? Because that clock was completely 0-0. I mean, there was no time to clock. It was clear as day. The announcers even said it. The referee came in, clearly said it. There should have been a dead call. And now I'm not mad. You know what I mean? It happens. But it's like, how in the hell do you miss a call like that? And then it almost felt like it was a makeup call for that when they called Walker for jumping over the line. Because, I mean, you go to a commercial break, we kick a field goal, we go to commercial break, you come back from the commercial break, you see the kicking teams getting ready to, the return team and the kicking team get ready to come on the field, mind you. Then all of a sudden you see a flag, and then they're like, first down and goal, Detroit. Because Walker got a personal penalty for jumping over the center. Now, that makes no sense. Because to me, if you're going to call a penalty, and I don't care for what team you're calling it on, but shouldn't you call that before a whole commercial break went? And before a punt or kick return team and the kicking team were entering the field of play? Like all of a sudden the referees just magically huddled and then a yellow flag falls out. And I mean, hey, I'll take the makeup call because it was a bullshit. You should have called that play dead. Had no time on the clock. But still the point. It's like, at least call it. It's NFL officiating this year has just been wild. I mean, they're calling some plays that, I mean, like me and another person we're talking on, I believe on Sunday. Matter of fact, our Sunday show, we were talking to Eagles fan was on here. Jalen Hurts got called for a delayed game because he threw the ball and his receiver broke off early and the ball ended up in the end zone. Now, mind you, he got called for delayed game, intentional grounding. And now, if you've seen the same call happen with Geno Smith against Detroit, both passes were clean passes. To me, they never called that before as an intentional grounding, but now magically it's in the rule book and they're calling it this season. They haven't called passes like that when receivers completely broke off the route and the quarterback already threw the ball where they were supposed to originally be. They've never called intentional grounding on those calls. Not in the last 5 years. I'm pretty positive. All of a sudden this year, they're calling anything intentional grounding these days. Hey, it's in the rule book, so it's a legit rule, but it's like, you never called the games like this before. So to me, it's been kind of wild. The officiating. I mean, it also, I mean, granted with the Walker penalty too, maybe Amazon screwed that up because it could have been to delay everything with streaming service. Because I know sometimes streaming service is not as fast as cable, but it looked pretty fishy. Like I said, when you see the return team come on, the kick team come on, refs huddle up, and then they call a penalty on the field goal that happened almost probably like 4 or 5 minutes prior to the play, to what's happening on the field at that time. So it was just kind of like one of those moments like, is this the latest makeup call? But hell of a game Thursday. I ain't mad. 3-1. Got first place in the North. Got Carolina this week. Stuff's looking good in Lion Country.
Where's the cigar at, Chris? Come on.
I got the cigar. It's a little one. It's a little one today.
Yeah,
I forgot to stop at the cigar store.
A little one after beating the Packers. Hi, everybody. Sorry I'm a little late. The old computer's acting up, so hopefully we got it fixed before the whole broadcast and not in the middle where it always acts up on us. But we're going to do our normal recap of week 4. I know he's been talking about the Lions and the Packers. A well-earned victory for Detroit. They dominated the game. You know, and then of course, you know, we'll do our preview for week 5. Just a few notes as far as news throughout the league. You know, I thought that it was interesting to me when you look at the matchups the previous week, the matchups this last week. A lot of people really thought highly of some of these teams out there just to see them all get knocked down back to reality. The Dolphins, the Steelers, you know, the woes just continue for the Raiders and the Bengals. You know, there's some surprises out there. You know, I think that we've all, you know, looked at this stuff and we're like, I feel vindicated by C.J. Stroud and the Houston Texans doing what they've done thus far in the season. I like C.J. Stroud above Bryce Young, but I think that Houston, when you look at the pieces that they brought in this offseason, the way they're calling plays, the acumen that C.J. Stroud seems to have as a quarterback, that's my big surprise in the AFC. Houston is a playoff contender. I know Pittsburgh did not play well. A lot of the Pittsburgh fans are blaming the offensive coordinator, Matt Canada. And, you know, they have every right to. You know, when you go for it on 4th down and 1, your running back is averaging 5 yards a carry in the game, and you decide to throw the ball from the shotgun, that's crazy to me. You know, but Houston is, you know, the one team that I'm happily surprised, you know. And so our buddy Robert Ross has got to be happy with the way that they've performed thus far. And then in the NFC, my surprise so far, and of course, this is like the quarter point of the season. I know there's 18 weeks now, or, you know, 17 games instead of 16. But, you know, you've been through 4 weeks of the year. I'm surprised about Tampa Bay and the way that Baker Mayfield has played. Their only loss has been to Philadelphia, who, you know, I think we all agree is one of the top 3 teams in the NFC. They're the defending NFC champions. They went down there and they ran the ball down their throat, despite Tampa having a really good defense. And so, you know, I'm surprised in the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and the Houston Texans on the good side. On the bad side, I'm stunned what's happened to the Cincinnati Bengals. You know, I really thought that they were going to continue to be, you know, dynamic in their passing game. It's obvious that Joe Burrow is hurt. I think that it is obvious that Orlando Brown Jr. is not the answer at left tackle. And, you know, that's why they gave him up in Kansas City. You know, you got to have somebody over there helping to chip or a tight end, you know, to help double team these pass rushers, or Joe Burrow's going to get his head taken off. And it's obvious that he is not healthy. And so that's my disappointment in the, you know, the AFC side. On the NFC side, I'd have to say the biggest disappointment so far, and I expected them to take a step back, but the Giants last night couldn't stop Seattle's pass rush at all. Their offensive line was decimated. The Giants are now 1-3. They had to come back from 21 down to the Arizona Cardinals in Arizona and even win that game. And I thought I saw a graphic earlier today that said the New York Giants have led 13 seconds this season. Now, I know Saquon Barkley's injured. You know, Daniel Jones can't do it all on his own. I think he's got weapons. He's obviously got Darren Waller. They never threw it to him last night. You know, I think he had 2 catches the whole night. They did not try to utilize a quick passing game to get the ball out of his hand with the pressure that they had. And so, in that division, Philadelphia, of course, is looking great. Dallas had the slip up in Arizona, but they're back to looking good. Washington played really well. Okay. Washington played really well. And so, I just think that the Giants are not a playoff team this year, either due to injuries or they've taken a big step backwards in the NFC, Chris.
I totally agree with you. The Giant, I'm just gonna go with the Giants, Daniel Jones, whoever came with that contract of $40 million. I don't know what the hell they were thinking. And honestly, I thought he earned it last year. I don't know what happened to him. He played pretty good towards
Pressure.
playoffs last year. But last night, he couldn't do shit. It was like a deer in headlights.
It was outlined during the broadcast by Troy Aikman. He showed the guy was open, but he couldn't get the ball to him because he was being hit. And because, he got rid of the ball, but it was off target because it was in the middle of him being hit. He didn't have 3 seconds to throw the ball. They tried to do a couple of quick things at the end, but it was too little too late.
Yeah.
And that Seattle defense, we talked about it when we were talking fantasy football a couple weeks ago. I selected the Seattle Seahawks because Peter King and a couple other guys had said, they went up there to Seattle and they watched them with all these young players. And they're doing this without Jamal Adams, who cost them a lot of draft capital. He tried to play in the game last night, coming off of an injury, and immediately ended up in concussion protocol. But the guys that they have drafted and brought in, Witherspoon this year, Tariq Woolen last year, they are for real on defense in Seattle. And if they can play up to that kind of standard throughout the year, now I'm not saying they're going to overtake the 49ers in that division unless the 49ers get injured, okay? But Seattle is a threat in the NFC for certain.
Yeah. That defense last night for Seattle, especially that rookie. I think, is it Wilson? Is it the rookie named Wilson?
Witherspoon. Devin Witherspoon out of Illinois.
95 interception to the house. Something like that. And he had a beautiful, and I mean beautiful sack on Jones last night as well.
Yep. Yeah, they dominated defensively, and they did it in New York. Now, a lot of that you could say is because their offensive line was decimated, but the defense didn't stop, Seattle. Seattle stopped Seattle. They're lucky that Geno Smith wasn't, really injured in this game. Drew Lock came in and he played okay, and they got a touchdown drive out of him. But, which was surprising to me because he hasn't really played. That was his first action in all the time that he has played or been there since the trade of Russell Wilson sent Locke to Seattle. That was the first time he's actually been on the field in something significant that wasn't preseason.
Yeah.
And so I think they could say that they have a decent backup, but I'm sure they're glad that Geno Smith was not all messed up. We'll get more information, over the next day or so, because they played on Monday night, of whether or not, they found something that they didn't see last night. But I expect he'll be okay, just, sore. And, but I've got, am I able to share? Are we ready for that?
Yeah.
Okay. Let's go through real quick. You already talked about, Green Bay and Detroit. And so we have the Sunday results here that we can kind of go through real quick. if my computer doesn't act the fool. All right.
Also, I want to read this off real quick while you're doing that. I was going to share it, but it's not a big deal. I just want to run this by. So, so the big thing coming in this league, coming in the draft this year, supposedly is Caleb's Williams. Is it from
Yeah,
USC?
Caleb Williams of USC. Right.
So, according to reports, that he's listed 5 teams that he will play for in the NFL. And if these 5 teams don't draft him, if he can't get a guarantee out of these 5, he will go back to USC because he can make like $30 million to play his senior year at USC. And supposedly that's more money than he can make playing in NFL. His 5 teams, which is kind of one of them's pretty, 2 of them are pretty stupid, if you ask me. He put the Cowboys and the 49ers, the Raiders, Vikings, and Giants. Now, the Raiders, Vikings, and Giants, pretty realistic, as you can see. Daniel Jones is probably could be done in New York. The Vikings are probably going to move on from Kirk Cousins, especially maybe possibly by the trade deadline, if they're still in the same predicament they're in right now. They're going to try to get capital because they haven't, unless they plan to re-sign him. We don't know. But we do know he's going to be a free agent. So if they're out of the playoffs, they might trade him at the trade deadline and get some picks. And the Raiders would make sense. But why would he put Cowboys or the 49ers? Last time I checked, the 49ers are on fire with Brock Purdy. They're not drafting you, bud. And the Cowboys, they've signed their life with Dak. And right now they're going to the playoffs as of right now. So I think this kid's a little off his rocker. I mean, if he wants to stay in USC for $30 million, go for it. But that's does that make sense?
Well, it does to me because I see the big picture of certain things. First of all, okay, the Raiders and the Vikings make total sense because they're with quarterbacks that Brock Purdy right now, because they are winning, that is why he is being allowed to be the quarterback. If they were to start losing for any reason, because they have the defense, they've got the running game, they've got, he can become the person that gets blamed for why they aren't winning, more than they are. And these franchises chase after talent. Cleveland had Baker Mayfield. They got rid of him, even though he was injured. He was the best quarterback they'd had play for him in 30 years since Bernie Kosar. They made the playoffs. They won a playoff game. They nearly beat Kansas City Chiefs in Kansas City. And they got rid of him because there was an opportunity to get somebody that they felt was better in Deshaun Watson. The same thing can happen to Brock Purdy. There's no guarantee until he signs on the bottom line, that he is going to get all this guaranteed money and get paid like a starting quarterback and all this other stuff. There is no guarantee that Purdy is going to remain as a starting quarterback. He's the best quarterback they got on their roster right now, and they're winning. But if he starts to throw interceptions, if he gets figured out, if he gets injured again, if things happen to him, yes, the 49ers may not have a top pick, but that doesn't mean they can't trade up again to get him. Because these franchises chase talent. They chase after talent. Dak has already been put on notice in Dallas because they traded for Trey Lance. And he did it without informing, the head coach. He did it without informing the quarterback when it comes to Jerry Jones, that is. Okay.
Yeah.
And he is in a situation where Dak wants more money because all these other quarterbacks got paid more money than him. And he's been under contract for a couple of years now. So he feels like he's Patrick Mahomes. Time to renegotiate my contract, get more money. But he has not produced in the playoffs.
Yeah.
Okay. And Jerry Jones is impatient, and you chase after talent. When people start saying Caleb Williams is the next Patrick Mahomes, people will do crazy things and get rid of their quarterback that they've invested time and money and energy in, if there's a possibility that they can get the next great one, the person that's going to fit in their system, the person that's going to take them over the top. Patrick Mahomes started 2 seasons and had him in the Super Bowl, and if it hadn't been for a D Ford offsides, they'd have been in back-to-back Super Bowls.
Oh, for sure.
Okay? They'd have been in 4 of the last 5 instead of only 3 of the last 5. Okay? And so when you chase talent, and they have all the talent in the world on that team, and they can afford to do it, I mean, they gave away draft picks to get Trey Lance, and they're still winning, and they still have draft collateral, okay, in order to make that move. And like I said, when it comes to Dallas, and they're not the only teams, he can say what he wants, but if there was another team that's in a position to win and they moved up to do the drafting, everybody can talk to these guys. They're not under contract. There's no, tampering or whatever. Hey, if we trade up, we've got all the pieces of the puzzle here. Would you sign a contract with us if we went and got the number 1 pick? Well, I didn't think you guys would be in that position. Well, yeah, we're going to trade up. We've got a deal in place, but we need to know you want to play for us. And they will chase after talent.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, Geno Smith looked good last night, but if they could have Caleb Williams, they'd take Caleb Williams. Okay. Jordan Love's looked so-so. He's been all right. He's been under contract. They haven't really given him a long-term deal yet. If they think they got all the pieces of the puzzle, they'd take Caleb Williams. Okay.
Oh, for sure. I mean,
Tampa Bay would trade up for Caleb Williams because the same thing would happen to Baker Mayfield. Okay. Sam Howell in Washington, they're not paying him nothing. If Washington shows they've got the running game with the 2 guys they got, the defense plays like they have been this year, with the exception of the Buffalo game where they just got beat out because they had a bunch of injuries that week. Washington has played really good defensively. Hey, what happens if we trade up for that spot? Would you sign with us? Daniel Snyder's not the owner anymore. Eric Bieniemy's our offensive coordinator.
See, a lot of those teams would make sense.
Yeah,
I was just pointing out.
There are other teams that are winning franchises that would chase after the talent if they thought the quarterback is the piece that's holding them back.
To me, it's just crazy that he just put 5 teams down. These 5 teams, or I'm staying in college.
Well, talk is cheap until the time comes.
Exactly.
He wants to get to the NFL, especially if it turns out, okay, if he wants to sign in the NFL, and this is something I heard this week. What happens if they fire Matt Eberflus in Chicago and they decide to throw a boatload of money at Lincoln Riley? They've got the top 2 picks right now in Chicago. There's no way they're not going to get him. And he'll go right back to playing with him. The head coach is his college coach in Oklahoma. He followed him to USC. Now he follows him to the pros. You know, he can
Yeah.
say all he wants that those are his only 5 teams, but if his coach goes there, you know, it's a whole nother ball game. Talk is cheap. It's what people do, their actions. So that covers the Caleb Williams deal. Looking right here, I watched the early game, and I flipped back and forth between the Toy Story, game that they were putting on and the regular live action game between Jacksonville and Atlanta. Jacksonville's defense is starting to come along. When it comes to the whole Toy Story situation, I thought it was underwhelming. There was lag. They kept having these shots that were way, way away from the field so they could show off Andy's room, and you're not watching the game. Anybody that's really interested in watching the game is not going to watch that. Okay.
But what I heard is more to try to get kids to watch
see how good it would look, and it didn't look good.
Yeah. I know I've seen a couple of the replays, and it just because I overslept for that game, I wanted to check the Toy Story out. And I watched a couple videos people shared of it, and it was I was like, there's no way I could not watch an NFL game like that. But I get it, the NFL is trying to get kids.
Yeah.
So I mean, the kids probably loved it.
The concept that they had, and excuse me for interrupting you. The concept that they have is great, but I think it's going to end up being a one-off. They're trying to teach young kids and expand the game. You've got this here that's, trying to do that for kids to make them interested. And my kids were interested at first, but when the graphics are less than a video game, they're not going to, be as interested. There was some stuff that was fun, and they had some funny things that they were doing. And, the commentary was fine, but for the most part, they lost interest after about 15 minutes. And, that's all there was. That was it. Anybody else that stuck around, wasn't really interested in what the game was doing. It was just the spectacle of it. But I thought Jacksonville played a lot better. Their offense is starting to come along, and they're staying in England to play again this next week against Buffalo. So that might give them a little bit of an advantage. They played in London, for several years in a row now. So they're used to playing there.
Oh, for sure.
And, having these other teams come over there, might be a little of a disadvantage, but Atlanta did not play well. I thought Desmond Ridder got exposed as the quarterback for Atlanta. They did not run the ball very well at all. And Jacksonville's defense was ready to go.
Yeah. Good bounce back game, and it makes the best sense to stay over there. I know at some point I've read articles that NFL wants to try to maybe at one day put a team over there, and they say if a team ever goes there permanently, it would probably be Jacksonville because they have the largest fan base over in London.
So then we move on to what I thought was going to be the game of the weekend, which is the Miami Dolphins were playing at the Buffalo Bills. You see there the Bills won 48-20. It was a back and forth game early on. Both teams had 14 points. Buffalo took the 21-14 lead, and then Miami started to make mistakes. Buffalo executed their offense to perfection. They finally learned to run the football. They gave the ball to Damian Harris. They gave the ball to James Cook. They gave the ball to Latavius Murray. And they took pressure off of Josh Allen, which allowed him to do play action passes. And he got the ball down the field to his favorite target, Stephon Diggs. They used a lot of the double tight end sets, and they mauled the front line of the Miami Dolphins, which goes to show you, in my opinion, that the whole putting up of 70 points last week against Denver was an aberration. Yes, they have a lot of playmakers on their team, and they have a lot of speed, but if you can control the clock and you can force your opponent into mistakes, all that speed ain't worth what it's wrote down on a piece of paper.
Exactly. Denver's defense truly sucked the week before, and Miami took a full advantage of them, but they played a real defense this week, and it didn't go as planned. And I gotta give it credit to Buffalo when credit's due. From week one, they've really got it going since week one. They've came a long way so far, and they're still showing that they're going to be tough over there in the AFC. It's not going to be easy park in that division. Miami learned that. I still think they're the two teams to beat in that division, but it's going to come down to the next meeting on who's possibly going to win that division overall. And right now, the Bills hold the first place over Miami. So,
moving on to the Toilet Bowl, you got the Denver Broncos playing at the Chicago Bears. Denver come off of giving up 70 points, while Chicago came off of giving up 41 to Kansas City. And early on, Chicago could do no wrong. Justin Fields was 16 of 16. They had, a 21-0 lead. They were pounding Denver, and it looked like it was going to be a repeat of what happened the week before with the Miami Dolphins. And instead, Denver turned the tables on them and came back to win the game at the end by a field goal. I was really surprised at the way this whole game unfolded. I thought Chicago had it, man. I was like, wow, they worked some things out. And then it turns out Denver worked some things out. I think both teams learned a lot about themselves over the last 2 weeks. And I expect both teams to do a lot better moving forward. I think they just had some roadblocks, either mentally or injuries, that caused them to have the kind of performances that they've had. And they just need to find some solid footing. Denver's in a really tough division. Chicago has a little bit of an easier time playing against Green Bay and Minnesota going forward. But I do expect both these teams to pick up some more wins over the next few weeks.
See, my input is way different. Because I'm looking at deep, maybe I might be looking too deep into things. Denver, I think I agree with what you said about Denver. Denver's got a new coach. They're going through things. They're in a harder division. I think it's still going to be a rough year for them. But with Chicago, I think a lot of players are not buying into the coach. And I think it's really starting to show now. Claypool is getting told once again to stay away from the team. So it looks like the Bears are trying, from all the reports and rumors I've heard, the Bears are trying to shop him around due to his comments. You already had Justin Fields call out the coach the week previous as well. And then he came out to another press conference and tried to retrace his words. You had Claypool do it. Now Claypool's told to stay away from the team last week and this week. And this is supposed to be one of their bigger, wide receivers to help Justin Fields. And it's kind of showing that his time to being in the Bears is probably done for. So I think it's coming down to the point now where some of these players have bought in, but some of these players are not buying in. And I think this might be a sign of a dumpster fire ready to happen. And if the Bears don't get any better than this, I think it's time, if Chicago ever wants to have a winning team, to get a new GM in there and a whole new coaching staff, because Ryan Poles, or whatever his name is, I think it's Poles, right? Ryan Poles.
Yeah.
He's shown that he has no clue what he's doing over there, because if you look back, he let Smith go because he wanted to pay Smith. This offseason, he gets 2 linebackers, pays a big price and had no problem paying them money. but wouldn't pay one of the best linebackers in the league money to stay. And it's not gotten any better over there. If not, they've got worse over these last few weeks. So for him, for the coaching staff and the GM, they better hope they start winning some games, or by the end of the season, they might be jobless. They should be anyway.
Yeah, and I have a feeling that maybe that's going to happen. They're going to really have to improve themselves going forward in order to save the coach's job. I think Claypool is going to be out of Chicago. He's going to end up getting cut. He's such a talented guy, but I think he's just a malcontent. I don't know if he is an Antonio Brown type person or if he's just, it feels like he's a Terrell Owens, type of person. He thinks he's better than everybody else. And, because he hasn't been getting the ball, there's a lot of frustration between him and the rest of the offense. And it's causing problems in the locker room.
Well, can I say this about Claypool? And I'm not condoning his actions and what he did, because you can't call your coach out on national TV multiple times now, and this shit happens. But look at last year when they traded for him. They barely used him then. And here we are going to week 5, and how many catches does the guy even have this season? Not many.
I don't know.
So can you really blame him for coming in the press conference and saying something? Because it comes to a point as a player when you get traded to a team and you barely helped them, barely got any action the year before. Here's the new year. You're still, nothing's going on. But then again, there's videos of him not blocking like he should be, not doing his job properly. So, it could be a player issue. I'm not ruling that out. But also, I'm looking at it like, as a player, I'd be kind of pissed too. Because at least in Pittsburgh, I was catching balls. At least in Pittsburgh, I could score a touchdown. And now I'm here and I ain't scoring shit.
Well, that moves us on to the game that I feel was the biggest disappointment of the weekend. And that was because before the game even began, we found out that Deshaun Watson was not going to play due to a shoulder injury. And that meant that meant that DTR was going to end up being the starting quarterback. And I was like, hey, this guy's really mobile. He showed a lot in the preseason. Maybe he will be able to complement what they are doing. Ford has produced just fine running the ball. Now, he's not Nick Chubb, but they brought in Kareem Hunt, so they've got some extra people there to keep the running game going. And the defense should have been fine, and instead, the entire team collapsed under the pressure of not having Deshaun Watson. I do not think that Baltimore is a world-beating team. Now, I understand that Indianapolis is an improving team, and they lost to them. Houston has shown that they are a pretty decent team, and they played them tough in week 1. And Baltimore beat up on an injured Cincinnati Bengal team. They haven't beaten anybody. Okay? Yeah. And they're all the fans for Baltimore, and they know who I'm talking to. All the fans of Baltimore act like, oh, we're going to the Super Bowl because Lamar Jackson got his contract. Odell Beckham Jr. is already hurt. They're not getting the ball to their wide receivers. They're still targeting Mark Andrews and Isaiah Likely, the tight ends, the most. And they've got J.K. Dobbins got hurt in week 1. So Gus Edwards has had to take on the majority of the snaps at running back. Yes, they give the ball to Melvin Gordon a little bit, but he's a fumble risk. And while I think the defense has played okay, I think it should be playing a lot better. I think they got a weak-ass secondary. And if they come up against one of these high-powered teams, I think Baltimore is playing Miami here in a couple weeks. They're going to get their ass kicked when they play Miami.
I think so, too. Also, my point is I want to bring up, I just read this moments before we got on here and kicked off the show. Do you know medical clearance? Deshaun Watson got medical clearance to play that game. They said he was able to play, and he wasn't hurt as bad as they thought. And they left the decision up to him, and he sat out. Now,
listen, he's got a guaranteed contract. He doesn't have to play. He had a legitimate reason in his mind to not play. Baltimore's got a really decent pass rush, and maybe he thought he would get knocked around, and he needed some more time to get healed up. Yes, this was going to be for first place in the division. Yes, they were playing at home. Maybe he had plenty of confidence in DTR, to come in there and do well for him.
yeah.
But, it didn't turn out that way. And so, as far as Baltimore goes, I'm not saying that they are a bad team. I think they're a playoff contender, but the injury bug has hit them again. And they're playing against teams that are also injured. They're playing against teams with rookie quarterbacks or backup quarterbacks. And until they beat somebody that I think is, a legitimate team, an Eagles, a 49ers, a Cowboys, a Chiefs, a Dolphins, a Buffalo, somebody of that caliber, they're a second-tier team, in my opinion.
I agree. I just wanted to bring up the Deshaun Watson because to me that's the kind of as of right now. Like I said, it might not be that big of a deal. He might have been, he might have knew he needed more time, but to me it was just kind of like, whoa! All I guaranteed money, chance for first place, and you get told you're able to play without seriously hurting yourself more, and you still choose to sit.
The LA Rams were in a dogfight against the Indianapolis Colts. Anthony Richardson returned from concussion protocol. He played pretty well in the first half, and the Rams had to go, to overtime here in order to get their victory. Puka Kanua is leading the league, in being the rookie receiver. He has got more yards and more catches in his first 4 games in the NFL than any other rookie in the history of the league. And if he's half the player that he is now, when Cooper Kupp gets back from injury, people better look out for the Rams because they're going to be pretty damn good.
Yeah. The Rams got it done. Fortunately, I was at a birthday party at this point, so I didn't get to watch most of these games on Sunday, unfortunately. But from what I kept on looking on my phone, LA and Indy looked like a game. Did Richardson play this week?
Yes, I just said that. Richardson played. He came off a concussion protocol. They made some plays. And on a side note, Jonathan Taylor has come off the PUP list. And he is cleared to practice starting Wednesday. And so they may have him, in the backfield here this next week, for the Colts. I don't know if they've got a bye or not. We haven't reviewed the byes start this week, for week 5. We'll have some teams. I know Seattle's got a bye, but we'll see who else has got a bye here shortly when we preview week 5. But, the Rams had a pretty good lead, and the Colts were able to come back on them, force overtime, but the Rams put it away in overtime. As far as Tampa Bay versus New Orleans, Derek Carr played in the game despite having a sprained AC joint, and he was efficient but not dynamic. Alvin Kamara came back from suspension, and I don't think he got enough touches. But maybe it was just because he was, trying to work himself back into game shape, having not played the first 3 games of the year. But Tampa Bay's defense looked good, as we talked about earlier. Baker Mayfield has been efficient. whether you want to call it a game manager or not, he's made plays with the guys on the team, and Tampa Bay is a playoff team. And right now, having them beat New Orleans and Atlanta faltering earlier in the week, or earlier in the day, I got Tampa Bay as the favorite in the NFC South right now, Chris.
Let me tell you, Tampa's playing so good, so are the Lions, that we don't play them this week, but we play them the following week in Tampa. And the NFL has already flexed that game to 425 for America's Game of the Week. So that tells you how good Baker Mayfield and the Buccaneers are playing. And same with the Lions, that they're already flexing that game, making sure it's a primetime game, making sure it's a big audience game. That just tells you how good the Buccaneers have truly been this year. Yes, they lost to the Eagles, but hey, the Eagles made the Super Bowl last year. They have a good chance of possibly making it back this year. There was no shame, really. And I mean, even though they lost by double digits, they really didn't get their ass kicked in that game. They almost tried to make a comeback, but, Philly's defense held on strong. Even when Derek Carr's been healthy, there's been moments that the Saints have looked really good, but they haven't clicked on all cylinders over there yet. But Baker's back to being Baker that we've seen at Oklahoma. He's coming in there and he's making plays. And right now, they're in first place. And they could steal that division from the Saints if they keep playing on this type of level.
I just think that the Saints haven't, clicked on offense yet. I think it's a result of, Carr being new to the team, but they've got the weapons around them. This is the second season that Carmichael has been the offensive coordinator for a long time there, but he hasn't called plays up until this last 2 years. Okay. It was always Sean Payton that was calling the plays on offense. And I think that he is struggling to put plays together to confuse the defense and allow them to open up for some big plays down the field. And so I think that that'll be something that they work on, and hopefully they'll get better throughout the season, because I picked the Saints to win the South, but right now it doesn't look like that they're a playoff team to me.
Oh,
moving ahead, we've got the Tennessee Titans, who bludgeoned the Cincinnati Bengals by running the ball at them. Derrick Henry had over 100 yards on the ground. Some nice throws by Ryan Tannehill. Joe Burrow is obviously injured. I think they're missing Samaje Perine as the backup running back to Joe Mixon. And they're just not getting the ball to their receivers like they have in the past. Part of that could be because of the injury to Burrow. But Higgins was out the second half of the game. And so, they had to go to Tyler Boyd, because they're double covering Jamar Chase. And this is the third year in a row that the Cincinnati Bengals have had a different starting tight end. They had C.J. Uzomah, and they went to the Super Bowl. He goes to the Jets. They had Hayden Hurst, and they make it to the AFC Championship game. And he goes off to Carolina this offseason. Well, now you've got your third tight end, that they're looking, and that's Irv Smith Jr., who was ineffective, when he was with Minnesota. He's done nothing for Cincinnati, at the tight end position. And it just feels like Cincinnati's falling apart. Their offensive line is not holding up. Burrow is hurt. The defense isn't making the kind of stops that they have in the past.
They're missing Bates.
They got two brand new safeties on the team. Jesse Bates went to Atlanta, and the other guy went to Carolina. I can't think of his name. But
they're missing them bad.
Do what?
They're missing that. Both of those players huge on defense.
Yeah. And so, I just think that as it stands right now, if they sit Joe Burrow, they're probably not going to do a lot of winning. And if they keep letting him play and he's injured, they're not going to do a lot of winning. And Cincinnati's in for a real down year.
Yeah, I agree, because you're 1-3. So realistically, right now in the division, you got Cleveland that can make the playoffs. You got Baltimore who can make the playoffs. And you still got Pittsburgh if they figure it out before it gets too late over there. At this point, if you're the Cincinnati Bengals, do you shut Joe Burrow down? If I'm the coach, I think I shut Joe down. I watched a little bit of the plays of the game. It looks like he can barely get the ball off with that calf injury. He's not throwing good passes. I think he's actually hurting the team probably more by trying to play than he would be on the bench. I mean, even though I still think they lose quite a bit of games with them on the bench. But if your quarterback can't throw the ball a clean pass 40 yards on the field because he's having trouble planting his legs to get the pressure on doing it, and he's trying to avoid getting sacked and players in the backfield, just sit the guy. You're 1-3. Your year's pretty much fucked right as of right now. But it's just going to get worse if you don't sit him. That's my opinion. Because he's not winning you games now. You're just going to keep losing.
Yeah. Well, we move on to the Los Angeles Chargers, who eked out a win last week at Minnesota, and they follow it up with a victory at home, if that's what you want to call it, because the place was packed with Raider fans. Now, they didn't have Jimmy Garoppolo. They had to start the rookie Aiden O'Connell. And O'Connell had his moments, but Khalil Mack went off in this game and had 6 sacks. He threatened to tie Derek Thomas's single-game record. And, Herbert did his thing. They ran the ball a little bit better. They started using Isaiah Spiller rather than Joshua Kelly. And, they had to spread it around to some different players because of the loss of Mike Williams last week. So we saw a little bit more of Josh Palmer. And, I was surprised that Vegas was able to stay in the game despite all of the great defensive plays by Khalil Mack. The rest of the defense just kind of let them go through them. They just kept on giving up big play after big play, letting them move the chains. I don't like the overall defense of the Chargers. I think they beat down on a much lesser team in the Raiders. And so, they're lucky to get away with this one. They had a pretty decent lead. I think it was 21-7, and they held on to win 24-17.
What's up, Euro Jackson? We already discussed the Caleb Williams. I think it's kind of ignorant on his behalf.
You jerkwad. Hang on.
Did you win some money this week, Dave? Is that what you're trying to show us?
No, it's stupid. I didn't win anything. I got my ass kicked because, first of all, I've got and this is one of the ones that the jerkwad from the Exceptional Sports News, made sure to point out after I won the Fantasy Baseball League that I got my ass beat in one of the fantasy football leagues because they what do I want to call it? I had a team that laid a dud, just completely laid an egg, couldn't do anything, the whole weekend. Aaron Jones was injured and early on, and I put him in thinking that he'd be okay, but he was questionable going in. Mostert fumbled the ball twice. The Pittsburgh defense gave up 30 points to Houston. Okay. Darren Waller didn't have jack shit for catches against Seattle. And so, I mean, my whole team, Chris Olave only had one catch in the game against, the Tampa Bay team, and Jordan Addison didn't catch a ball at all for Minnesota. And so it was bad. So now we're back to where we belong here, and that's the game between the Minnesota Vikings and the Carolina Panthers. I don't know how they managed to win this game. Opening drive of the game, they get all the way down to the 1 yard line, and Kirk Cousins throws a pick six the other direction. So Carolina starts the game out up 7-0. And, but their defense, I've said this, Brian Flores, and granted it's Carolina, they had Bryce Young starting again rather than Andy Dalton. And, but their defense has improved in Minnesota. It's the offense that's not keeping them in games this year, like against, the Chargers last week. And so, Minnesota got off the schneid. They're 1-3. What can they do going forward? If the defense continues to play well, but the offense can make some plays because they're not running the ball well. They did utilize Cam Akers for the first time in this game, and he looked a lot better than Alexander Madison. I hope they leave him as the starter because, Madison looks a lot better if he's coming off the bench.
Yeah, I have to agree with that.
And really, we already talked about the Houston-Pittsburgh game. C.J. Stroud looks really good. His receivers are looking good. And they're people that you never heard of. You got Nico Collins, Tank Dell. Now, they do have Dalton Schultz, the former Cowboy, at tight end. And they have built a defense. D'Amico Ryans, the head coach, former defensive coordinator for the San Francisco 49ers. In his first year there, he's turned the offense over to this coordinator whose name eludes me. And this guy is putting together the kind of game plans that the Saints offensive coordinator wishes he could put together. And they're stringing plays together. C.J. Stroud is not turning the ball over. They're running the ball enough to keep the defense honest with Dameon Pierce and Singletary. And, they're making plays. And Houston is really a surprise. I think that they are a playoff team right now, but they're going to have to battle going forward against, the Jacksonville Jaguars.
Yeah.
And, they've already beaten Jacksonville. So they have the upper hand right now in that division.
I got to give it up to C.J. Stroud. Since we started this broadcast, I have not been nice to Ohio State quarterbacks. Simply the fact that we haven't had one that's made an NFL quarterback. I think Houston might have the first Ohio State quarterback that's actually going to turn into a quarterback and be a decent quarterback in this league. C.J. Stroud started out rough in the first couple of weeks. Since then, he's found a groove. He's seeing stuff clearly, and the kid is making some plays. And Houston might have a quicker rebuild than they thought they were going to if he keeps playing to this level. They definitely got a chance to make some noise in that division.
Want to say hi to Dontario Moore, who's watching us.
What's up, Dontario?
He liked the video, so I know he's checking us out. He's a Baltimore Raven fan too, but he's a good dude.
Yeah, he's the one that we had on the broadcast earlier.
That them other guys go for. But, we'll move on here. Philadelphia and Washington. Washington was the last team to beat Philadelphia in the regular season last year. And, Sam Howell, despite how bad they looked against Buffalo the week before, playing a divisional matchup, playing against a team that they know Eric Bieniemy's offense was on point. They ran the ball, they passed the ball, they play actioned, and Washington's defense kept them in the game enough to get it to overtime. And, it's just unfortunate that eventually, one of these teams had to win. Philadelphia is the superior team, so they deserve to win the game. But Washington's right there. They're right there with Philadelphia. They've played tough throughout this year thus far. Their only real slip up has been, against, Buffalo last week when they got blown out, but Buffalo, and we talked about this, I think Buffalo's probably, and I got them, going to the AFC Championship game at the very least. Last year, they were the Super Bowl favorite. I think they got a chip on their shoulder by the way they lost to Cincinnati in the playoffs, and they're beating up on people. They did not have a first good game against the Jets, but it's been all downhill slide since then. They've been running downhill with their offense. Their defense is stopping people. And, so Washington has nothing to be ashamed of for getting beat up by Buffalo the way they did. And they should be, they don't believe in moral victories in the NFL. They definitely deserve one here against Philadelphia. And they're a team to watch going forward.
Yeah.
But, Philadelphia gets the win here. They eked it out, and their schedule does them no favors going forward. They've got a very interesting game coming up here this next week against the Rams in L.A., which, that'll give us a real indication with them going to the West Coast, having to go clear out there and play against a team that can put up points, that defense is no slouch. They had a rough game on Monday night against Cincinnati last week. But other than that, they played okay.
Yes, they have. They've played pretty good. Washington is that dark horse that could still come out the NFC East. Don't count them out.
Well, then we got the New England Patriots, and they got beat down by the Dallas Cowboys. Dallas, I think they took out their frustrations from the loss to Arizona on New England. Mac Jones got pulled from the game after throwing a pick six and another interception. They tried to go with Bailey Zappi, but I got to be honest, he's not the better of the two quarterbacks. And, Dallas's defense went back to feasting. Micah Parsons, was playing really tough. Now, he did get injured for a little while in the game, but he came back in and made some plays. I'm sure Dallas misses Trayvon Diggs, and it was a shock to lose him. I don't know if that affected the whole team or if they just overlooked Arizona, but they didn't overlook New England, and I don't think they're going to be overlooking their next opponent. Can't wait to talk about the game that's going on next Sunday night, Dallas at San Francisco.
Yeah. Dallas definitely came back and got New England. New England, it's not looking good over there because a lot of rumors are having it. If Belichick can't start getting some wins, he could lose his job. It'd be kind of crazy to see a different coach in New England, but it might be time because it don't seem nothing's getting better over there. They got a good defense. He's always got a good defense, and they make good substitutions, but on the offense is a whole different ball game. And this is like the second year we've seen them have a good defense, but it seems like they can never be consistent or do much on offense.
Mac Jones, in my opinion, is just a hair better than a game manager. But in order to be that kind of player, you have to have weapons around you. And the offensive line is just barely above average. And the offensive weaponry that they have is below average. Okay. They're not utilizing the players that they have on their team, and putting them in the best positions that they can because of the offensive line, because they have to get rid of the ball quickly. And the guys that they have are more down the field type of players. Now, they brought in Juju Smith-Schuster, but he can't do it all on his own. Devontae Parker has been okay, but he needs to get open way down the field, and the offensive line doesn't give him enough time to do that. And, they've swapped out deep, tight ends, over the last couple of years. They had Jonnu Smith and Hunter Henry. Now it's just Hunter Henry. And, to me, I don't like what they did to the running game. They added Ezekiel Elliott, and he doesn't have any speed. Yeah, he's a thumper, but you got to get the ball down by the goal line in order for him to be effective. Ramondre Stevenson is not dynamic enough to be the starting running back for them. Yes, he can put up yards if the passing game is playing well, but, for the most part, I just think that their offense is missing some things. They're missing some dynamic weapons, and their offensive line is to blame. It's not because Mac Jones isn't a decent quarterback, but it's kind of the same thing that's happening, to Desmond Ridder in Atlanta. He's getting beat up because of the offensive line. Daniel Jones in New York, offensive line. Jordan Love in Green Bay, offensive line. All of these offensive line, that's the weakest position in all of football. And that's one of the reasons why some of these spring football leagues are trying to season offensive linemen to get them ready to go into the, to the high league here in the NFL, is because they're in enough depth at offensive line. Kansas City went from Orlando Brown Jr. and paid big money to bring in Jawan Taylor, and they waited around. They had an injured, penalty, devoted player in Donovan Smith that they're like, we think we can fix him. And so they bring him in, and he's had penalties. He hasn't been injured, but he's holding all the time, and so it's hard to find good offensive linemen. And New England is one of those teams that is, having that problem.
Oh, for sure.
So we moved to San Francisco. That was one team that was able to go toe-to-toe with Arizona and not have any problems. The other teams that have played Arizona has played them close or beat Dallas, and, San Francisco was playing at home and not in Arizona. Christian McCaffrey got 4 touchdowns in the game. They have really been relying on him. Deebo Samuel has not made a lot of plays this year. Brandon Ayuk has been hurt. Now, he came back and played in this game and had a few long passes, but didn't manage to get into the end zone. And George Kittle has really been reduced to just a few catches a game, but mostly an inline blocker. I expect that to change this next week, but we'll have to see what happens. As far as Arizona goes, Joshua Dobbs is performing admirably at quarterback. They're trying to run the ball with James Conner. They've got a few wide receivers in, Hollywood Brown, to get the ball to. Zach Ertz at tight end. But, I still think Arizona is the team we thought they were, which is one of the worst teams in the league. They're just playing as hard as they can early in the year because they haven't reached the point where they realize, yeah, we probably don't have a shot to make the playoffs.
Well, let's see. I would agree with that if they started that rookie. But you got Josh Dobbs back there. He knows he ain't going to be the starter next year, regardless if they move on from Murray or they keep Murray. He knows he has no future in Arizona. That's why I want to say Arizona, I believe, could be that dark team and sneak out some more wins against teams that they should get killed by, just for as long as Dobbs can keep playing like he is, because Dobbs is just playing for a backup role, maybe somewhere else. Or maybe another team goes to another rebuild somewhere else in the league, and maybe they might need a QB to plug them along for that season, and maybe Josh Dobbs gets some more playing time somewhere else next year because they can look back and see, wow, this kid really did play his ass off all season and still a couple victories away from other teams. And so to me, they're going to be the worst team in the league. There's no doubt. But they're showing that they're going to be that team that if you overlook them and you give them an inch, they might just steal that victory. Because, like I said, Joshua Dobbs, he got something to lose. He can go in there and throw 4 picks in a game. You know what I mean? So he's going to try to make those tight plays, and he might pull some stuff out. And I'm all for it. Hopefully, maybe he can land a good backup job and find a permanent home. I always liked Dobbs from the University of Tennessee. I thought he was a decent quarterback. You know, I'm actually surprised the Steelers let him go.
Well, time to talk Taylor Swift, right?
Taylor Swift was in the presence again, and KC had a pretty rocky game. Kelsey wasn't really a part of that much, and Patrick Mahomes wasn't such Patrick Mahomes. Still got the W, though.
Yeah, Kansas City started out on a roll, got 17-0 lead, and then, Vegas intervened on the blowout, in my opinion, because he telegraphed that first interception as like, I don't know what happened, And then at the end, when they had a chance to not only cover the over and the spread, he slides at the 2-yard line instead of going in for the touchdown. And they can make the excuse all they want. Well, I didn't want to have to put my defense in the position to have to stop them from scoring twice when they only had 20 points the whole game. They're on a really good defense that's been playing well all season. I just think sometimes you look at these games and you got to think to yourself, you know that they're controlling some aspects of these games. They just are. And so, I'm glad Kansas City got the victory. They made Zach Wilson look dynamite so that, he can go forward in the future, the next few weeks. If he continues to improve and play like he did against Kansas City, the Jets are still in the hunt for a playoff, spot.
I will point this out.
It's still too early in the season with that defense to write them off.
I will point this out. What I see with my own little eyes, when they let Wilson roam out of that pocket and move and allow the receivers to get open, and he throws the ball, he looked like a way better quarterback, a confident quarterback. There was a lot of progress there, and they did bring that up with Wilson. And supposedly he did ask the coaches, and can we get more plays where I could roll out of the pocket? And to me, you got to play to the strengths of your quarterback. If that's what helps him move around, builds his confidence, lets people get more open, let the kid play. You got nothing to lose. You got a good-ass defense on the other side of the field. Let the kid play the game. Because that's the problem with some of these coaches. They want to control everything the quarterback does. But if you don't play to his strengths, you're costing yourself victories. You got to let the kid, if that's what helps, if that's what makes Wilson better, let him get out of the pocket a little bit more. The kid can run the ball. He's not slow. To me, it just you got a shitty O-line. So now if he's able to move away from that O-line and get 5 more seconds to throw a perfect pass, you got nothing to lose.
Well, let's preview week 5. And we start with the Thursday night game, and that's the Chicago Bears at the Washington Commanders. Now, the way the Commanders' defense has been playing, they're playing at home. Chicago has been playing like crap. They did play pretty good in the first half of last week's game, but it was against Denver. I like Washington in this game. What do you think, Chris?
Not Washington. I mentioned our show on Sunday evening. We went through a lot of details with the Bears. I've already said my piece that I've said on that show. I think the players are not buying in with Chicago. I think it could be about to be a big dumpster fire, even more than it's already has been. I think if the Commanders play like they did against the Eagles, they should be able to blow the Bears out. So I'm going with the Commanders.
Jacksonville plays against the Buffalo Bills in London. This is considered the ninth home game for Buffalo, but really Jacksonville has the advantage by staying there because they played there last week against Atlanta. And so you've got Jacksonville was a playoff team last year. Buffalo was a playoff team last year. The last time the Jacksonville Jaguars played the Buffalo Bills was a couple of years ago. And it was Urban Meyer was the head coach, and they beat Buffalo by the score of like 9-6 because of their defense. Now, I think Buffalo was a much better improved team from that time, and I think Jacksonville's offense is a lot better. But, if Miami can't put up, the kind of numbers that you're looking for against Buffalo, then I'm not sure Jacksonville can either. Now, they're not playing in Buffalo, so the dynamic changes a little bit here. I wouldn't be surprised if Jacksonville eked this one out, but if they're not going to blow them out by any stretch. It could be a little bit of a dogfight. I expect Buffalo to win the game.
I expect Buffalo to win, but I will say this. Jet lag's a real thing. Time difference is a real thing. Being in a whole different country playing an NFL game is a real thing. And Jacksonville, like you said, has the advantage because they get to practice there. They're already dialed into that time, like they've been there a while now. So they do have that. And I'm just going to point this out. If Jacksonville's serious about winning that division and making the playoffs, they better make a fucking statement on Sunday because you got the Texans playing Atlanta. If Atlanta plays like they did last week, and the Texans keep playing, and CJ Stroud keeps making plays, they're going to get a W, puts them 3-2. If Jacksonville loses the Buffalo and puts them 2-3, they lose first place in the division. Yes, it's only week 5, but your record's 2-2. You got a little confidence after maybe that last win. But Jacksonville has not been firing on all cylinders. So they need to try to get this W as much as possible they can from the Bills because they really need it if they're really going to start making a run and taking this division. If not, their division could get really interesting. But I do think the Bills go in there. They're obviously the better team. Josh Allen is playing lights out the last couple of weeks.
I think he's the front runner for the MVP right now.
So my money's with the Bills, but and I'm just talking likelihood of Jacksonville. They really need this one. So that's a game that I'm going to this week do my best to wake up at 9:30 in the morning and watch.
Well, my money's with the Houston Texans in Atlanta. The Falcons did not look good against Jacksonville in London, and I understand that they were playing in another country, but Atlanta has not looked good the last couple of weeks. They have not been playing up to what they did the first couple of weeks of the year. Houston has been pretty consistent throughout the season, and I don't think that, if Houston is consistent, and they continue to do what they've been doing, I really think this is an easy game for Houston against Atlanta. I like the Texans to win the game.
I'm going with the Texans too because Atlanta played a decent game against Detroit. They looked like they were going to be a tough team until last week rolled around. And if my money's going to be on the Texans, they got all the momentum right now. They got 2 wins back to back. And their 2 wins back-to-back weren't just any wins. They were blowout, pretty close to being blowouts. My money is on Texans.
Well, here's an easy one. I think we both agree the Detroit Lions should beat the Carolina Panthers. Now,
Agreed.
Carolina actually has a pretty good defensive front, and they've caused some problems for some of the teams that they have played. But I don't see them going into Detroit and winning that game. As long as Detroit doesn't overlook Carolina, Detroit should win this game because they can pass it all over the yard. And they're going to get Jameson Williams back this week.
Yes.
Thanks to the reduction of his suspension. And we forgot to mention that in our notes for the league and everything, that they have a new set of gambling rules throughout the league. And that, there is a certain number of games, and if you gamble on the NFL or try to fix a game, you are banned for life. But he goes from the 6-game suspension to the 4-game suspension. Jameson Williams will play in the game. I don't know how much help he'll be because I sure didn't see much out of him last year and the later part of the season.
Well,
but I like what the Detroit Lions have going already.
I got to take on this.
Doesn't disrupt that. Detroit continues to roll.
Well, here's a take. J-Mo after practice today had his first media session. Media asked him what you've been doing since you've been away from the team and suspended. He said every day he was practicing on his own with the catch machine, the ball machine. He caught 100 passes a day, every day while he was gone away from the team, and that's good news. From the reports of Goff in his press conference today, he said he expects J-Mo to have some plays coming his way this Sunday because he will play in the game. And in J-Mo's sake, Dan Campbell said basically through the code words of Dan Campbell said in his press conference for the week that he basically said that what J-Mo's basically facing. And this is all through code talk. They asked him, he said, all I want J-Mo to do is to be a reliable receiver. And that's all he expects. But that's also saying, guess what? We got here without you. Our offense hasn't missed you. You didn't do much for us last year. You took yourself out of the first 6 games, well, now 4 games. So if he, by the end of the season, if he don't become a reliable receiver and help this team from here to the end of the season, there's a good chance the Lions move on from J-Mo. I mean, if all these receivers outproduce him for the rest of the season, how do you keep him along?
Looking ahead to the next game, I think this is going to be a very interesting one here because this right here is basically for a piece of first place in the division. You got the Tennessee Titans at the Indianapolis Colts. Now, we've seen the Titans take apart a wounded Bengal team, but other than that, I don't think that they played all that great throughout the season. The Colts were into overtime with the Rams. The Colts are playing at home. They got Anthony Richardson. I just think the Colts win the game. I think that Tennessee will keep it close, but, I think that the Colts can win this one, Chris.
I agree. I think Richardson brings a definitely level of play the Colts definitely need it from quarterback over these last couple of years because the Colts never had a bad defense or a bad wide receiver core. There's also rumors I've seen that there's possible Jordan Taylor possibly plays in this game, which that would be very good news for the Colts to get and Anthony Richardson if he does get Jonathan Taylor back over there. But I think they're the better team on paper. I think Tennessee got lucky this past week. So
We'll find out.
I'm going with the Colts.
Yeah, well, then you got the 1-3 Giants against the 3-1 Dolphins. This one looks like another easy matchup where I'm going to take the Dolphins. The Giants are still without Saquon Barkley. I don't know if he's going to play in that game, but if they had him in the game, at least they can run the ball and control the clock a little bit better and keep the Dolphins' high-powered offense off the field. But that's easier said than done, you know. And I think that the Dolphins playing at home, it's still warm down in Miami during this time of year. I don't think there's any doubt Miami wins the game against the Giants.
Miami wins this hands down. I'm not touching the Giants with nothing at this point. I will say the Giants defense, if you play like you fucking did last night, you might be in for a long afternoon. I'm just going to say that. I don't know. I'm not saying Miami puts another 70 points or some crazy shit like that. I'm just saying if they play defense like they did last night, Miami's going to have a field day in Miami, and the drinks will be flowing for all those fans down there. That's all I will say.
Here's the battle of two teams that I think are mirror images of each other. Neither offense is getting on track. Both teams have good defense. The Patriots are playing at home. Derek Carr is still playing with that hurt AC joint in his shoulder. Now maybe having Alvin Kamara back practicing with the team for a second consecutive week, they get a little creativity in their offense and they're able to start moving the ball down the field because they have the weapons to do it. They just haven't been utilizing them, whereas the Patriots don't really have the weapons and they've got a weaker offensive line. I want to take the Saints in the game, but I think because they're playing at home and because they got embarrassed against Dallas, Patriots win this week against the Saints.
To me, it has a lot to do with Derek Carr and that shoulder. If he can throw the ball better, Kamara can make more plays, maybe help his arm a little bit more, not having to throw so many balls in that game, then sure, the Saints should win. But my question is for the Saints, do you just sit Carr? You got Jameis Winston. I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying Winston's the fucking savior here, but he has won games in the Saints system. He has been there a couple of years. You got Kamara back. You have players. You got a good defense. Mac Jones literally seems like he's just finding ways to lose every week out there on the field. So do you trust your defense? Let Carr sit and not move that shoulder at all. And then maybe revisit it the following week and see how that shoulder might fail for him. And maybe let Jameis Winston maybe take the helm of this game, maybe next week. Then you get Derek Carr, who might be in a less pain, more able to do things. And then maybe you make a run you still have a chance at your division. I don't think your division is going to get too crazy unless the Buccaneers snap a huge winning streak or some crazy shit happens. But to me, the Saints really have to really look at that. And I think they could win this game with Jameis Winston. But if Derek Carr starts and they have problems again this week, Belichick's defense might help them win that game. It'll be a close one if they both struggle on offense.
Well, you got a battle in the AFC North. You got Baltimore running their mouth that they think they're so great. And you got Pittsburgh coming off of an embarrassing loss against Houston. And that always has me, when a team gets embarrassed, the next week they always seem to perform better. Now, the Steelers are not going to have probably Kenny Pickett, which means they're going to turn the ball over to Mitchell Trubisky. And he didn't play bad last year, for Pittsburgh.
No.
He kind of kept them in games. He kept the season rolling along until they were ready to give the ball to Pickett and let him take over. Now the Steelers' running game is starting to improve. They played pretty decent against Houston. But Baltimore, this is their opportunity to get a stranglehold on the AFC North. You've got Cleveland just lost. Cincinnati's in the dumper. Pittsburgh could be put down 2 games behind Baltimore if they manage to win this game, but they're playing in Pittsburgh. Okay. These teams know each other so well. They know how to game plan for each other. I think Baltimore wins the game, but I got a sneaky suspicion Pittsburgh's got something for Baltimore.
Possible. It's going to be a division game. Like you said, they got embarrassed. They're looking to redeem themselves. I'm still going to put my money on Baltimore just because Pittsburgh is, every time I've picked Pittsburgh this year, it seems like they've let me down. But I would not mind seeing Pittsburgh smack the Baltimore Ravens in the mouth. So I'm going to pull for them. But as of right now, I would say the Ravens probably win that game.
Well, we're in week number 2 of the Toilet Bowl series. We got the Cincinnati Bengals versus the Arizona Cardinals. And these 2 teams have typically over the years been teams that are not winning franchises. Cincinnati's have been on the upcome the last 3 years. The Cardinals have played pretty good over the last decade with Kurt Warner at quarterback, and then Carson Palmer was there, Well, now they got Kyler Murray, and Murray's out and hurt. Dobbs has performed admirably, as we've talked about it before. And I got to be honest, I think this is the nail in the coffin for Cincinnati. The way Arizona has played this year, how tough they have played, I think the Cardinals beat the Bengals, and that'll do it for the Bengals for the season. I think the Cardinals put them out of their misery.
Honestly, I'm going with the Cardinals, and the only why I'm saying go with the Cardinals is because the plays I watched with the Bengals Sunday before I left, for that birthday party, it didn't, like I said, it looked like Joe Burrow was struggling to trying to throw a 12-yard pass to Chase. It looked like he could barely put any real pressure and stance in that pocket, and it just looked like he had trouble moving from a blitz, whole 9 yards. If he's not healthy and he can't throw balls better by this Sunday, Cardinals got, like I just said in the previous week, the Cardinals, Josh Dobbs, they got nothing to lose. They're going to come in there and play their ass off. So I'm riding with the Cardinals because I don't trust Burrow in that leg.
I love the Philadelphia Eagles, but this is my upset of the weekend. I think they go into L.A., and because of the long trip out west, playing against a team that's playing in their own building, they've got, enough firepower with Matthew Stafford throwing the ball around. They've started to run the ball decently. They've got a decent offensive line there, and the defense has played well for the Rams. They stopped the Seahawks. They basically stopped the Bengals. Now I understand that the Bengals are not the Bengals that we've seen in the past, but they stood tall and were in the game with the 49ers. And I think that, the Eagles are just due for a loss. I like the Rams in this game, Chris.
I like the Eagles. I'm still going to stick to Eagles because even when you thought they were going to lose, they still found a way to pull it out. So I'm only sticking with them because they're 4-0. But I'm hoping you're right, because I will say it, it's probably one of my first times in my life being a Lions fan, which I'm kind of looking ahead a little bit to seeding. I see them 4-0, us 3-1. So yes, I would love them to be 4-1, and then we should win Sunday, be 4-1. I haven't ever really been in this position to look at playoff seeding this early. So I'm going to hope for the Rams, but I'm still going to think the Eagles might pull this out still. They're looking pretty good over there again this year.
Zach Wilson is improving in the system that Nathaniel Hackett has in place. While I don't really like their offensive line, and I think Denver can get to Zach if he moves out of the pocket and he plays like he did against Kansas City, that Jets defense can hold down the Broncos. I got the Jets beating Denver in Denver.
Same here. I think the Jets get their second win and stuff's moving out. Will Aaron Rodgers be in attendance this week for the Broncos and Jets game? Time will tell.
Well, then you got the Kansas City Chiefs coming off of a victory over the Jets where they looked great in the first quarter and then just kind of let the Jets hang around. And they're going to play at Minnesota. Minnesota struggled to get a victory against Carolina, which leads me to believe there shouldn't have any problem Kansas City beating the Vikings in Minnesota. I think it'll be a fun game. I think that the Vikings will be able to put up a few points because of the style of offense that they run there. But, okay, here's the caveat, okay? The Chiefs defense will win this game, okay? Just the Chiefs defense alone will win this game. Kirk Cousins will throw another interception. They will fumble the ball. That's what they've been doing thus far this year. Kansas City goes up there and shows them who's boss. They'll run the ball well with Isaiah Pacheco because the Vikings aren't really stopping the run. They're only holding down the pass. But Kansas City is spreading the ball around to so many different receivers. I don't think they're going to have any trouble in the game. Kansas City wins in Minnesota.
Yeah, I got my money in Kansas City. No questions asked. I think like I said, I mentioned it earlier in this broadcast that I think you could see Kirk Cousins get shipped at trade deadline if someone needs a quarterback on a playoff team, possibly, because I think they lose here. It's 1-4. Do you really have faith that Minnesota comes back from the 1-4 to even come close to a playoff berth? I mean, it's possible, but everything I've seen from them from week 1 till now don't look highly likely of happening. I think the Chiefs can maybe come back here and bounce back from that close game, get a nice dub. I think the defense definitely shines, possibly a couple picks, a couple forced fumbles. And the one thing I want to bring up is I don't know how many people notice, and I mean the Chiefs are still going to be there. It's not like they're not going to be there and have a chance to go back to the Super Bowl. But I do want to point this out. Kansas City's offense right now don't look as scary as it has in years previous. Eric Bieniemy leaving, I didn't really know if it would show a big effect. But these last couple of weeks, you can see the difference between Eric calling the plays and Matt Nagy. And I'm just kind of wondering, is there a point that Andy Reid comes in here and starts being the advisor if mishaps start happening more often? And I mean, like I said, I'm not saying it's been crazy bad there. It's just you can see the difference. But then again, you got a lot of young receivers that are now starting to make some plays. So it could just be the young talent as well.
Well, I got news for you. Matt Nagy ain't calling the plays. Andy Reid is. Just like when Eric Bieniemy was there as the offensive coordinator. It's the game plans that the offensive coordinators put together. And if you're seeing that the game plan is not working out well, then, that falls on Matt Nagy. But the first 15 plays of the game, they're the type of team that scripts their offense. And if you saw what they did in the first quarter against the Jets, the game plan was working just fine.
Oh, for sure.
And so I don't think that they're going to have any trouble. I think the Chiefs win. We go from there to the game of the weekend, without a doubt. The 3-1 Dallas Cowboys take their defense to San Francisco to play in Santa Clara against the 49ers at Levi Stadium. And they're 4-0. These teams have met each of the last 3 years in the playoffs, and the 49ers have gotten the best of the Cowboys. And I think that is something that really eats at the Cowboys team, that the 49ers have their number. It's the opposite of what it was in the 90s when the Cowboys always had the 49ers number. And so now these two teams are going to face off. I think that it's going to be a defensive battle. I don't expect there to be a whole lot of points. 20-17 could win it. San Francisco's playing at home. I got more faith in them. I'll take the Niners.
I'm taking the Niners, but I'm hoping the Cowboys get again for playoff seeding, get a W. And then all the teams ahead of the Lions will all be tied with the Lions by the end of Sunday if that works out. But I do want to say this. I think this is a huge game for Dak Prescott because, like we talked earlier, Dak wants even more money, and he hasn't really done more to make more money than he's already making. So to me, this table this Sunday is his test to show Jerry Jones, I am the guy who can get it done. Because if he can't win these games, see you later.
Hey, I want to shout out to Gregory Drake, who's watching just at the right time because we've got the Green Bay Packers against the Las Vegas Raiders. And the Packers, they've looked okay at times. I thought that their offense has played pretty well throughout the year, but their defense has kind of let teams get back in it. They haven't strung together real good offensive game plans in the fourth quarter. And with the exception of, the big comeback against the Saints, and they played real well against Chicago, I haven't seen much out of Green Bay. Yeah. And they're going to go play in Las Vegas. Now, I'm assuming that Vegas will have Jimmy Garoppolo back at quarterback, and he'll be out of the concussion protocol. And that'll be the first time that he plays with Josh Jacobs, who will be at full strength, because when they played before, he didn't have any time playing in the games because he'd been sitting out the whole preseason. Yeah. So now he's in game shape after a few games. He'll have the opportunity to have Jacobs running the football. They got to get the ball to Devontae Adams. I know he got hurt this last week, but he came back into the game. I like the Raiders to beat the Packers on Monday Night Football.
I'm rooting for the Raiders because I want to see Green Bay. Obviously, they're in second place. I want to see them take another L. But the Packers could possibly win this game if the Raiders allow it. But then again, I don't trust the management. I don't trust the coach over there because it's been a fucking circus since the season started. You had Chandler Jones supposedly getting locked up in the mental hospital by the Raiders, locked out of the facility. Now, maybe you might see a different team, just possibility. They released Chandler Jones, after he got arrested this past weekend. So maybe with the drama being completely away from the team now, maybe, and getting Jimmy G back, maybe you see him play a complete game as a team and get a win. But as long as
Gregory Drake, the Raiders are your team, and you're saying that the Packers are going to win?
That's what threw me off. I mean,
I'm definitely betting on the Raiders now for sure, because Greg's wrong all the time.
Well, the Packers, I give it up to Jordan Love. He, like I said earlier, when I was waiting for Dave going over Thursday night, Jordan Love hasn't played all that bad as I thought he was going to be. He's actually looking like a decent quarterback. So as long as the defense shows up and if the Raiders play like they have from week one, then Green Bay for sure has a legit chance. But if they get down there, Jacobs is running the ball better, and Jimmy G can hit Adams and throw the ball, they got a chance to win this game. It might be. I think it's going to be a good game, though.
I know it's not this particular team, but the Raiders are classically a really good team on Monday Night Football.
Hey, that was a lot.
You
that
know,
was a lot
I
like the
don't
Lions.
believe. I think that Jordan Love will play well, but I think that when it all comes down to it, you know, if Jimmy G plays, Josh Jacobs is at full speed, I think the Raiders get back into it and they win the game.
Oh, for sure.
There's our preview of Week 5, buddy.
Yeah, it's been a pretty good season so far.
This last week was crazy.
Yes,
you know, with the Colts almost beating the Rams. You know, the Bears had the big lead on the Broncos, and then they let it slip away. The Chiefs with the 17-0 early on and let the Jets back in it. You know, I mean, there's a lot of parity in the NFL. But, you know, some of this stuff, I just continue to say, well, it's scripted, you know, because they can't let everybody hit the over. They can't let everybody get the, cover the spread, you know, and shit. And so they got all these new rules, you know, for gambling in the NFL. And I'm glad to see that Jameson Williams will be coming back, you know, this week for Detroit. I don't know how effective he'll be, but he's another weapon added to your team.
Oh, yeah.
Next week we'll have a breakdown of where we predicted the teams would finish at the end of the year and what their current standings are. And we'll compare and see how right or wrong we've been thus far. Plus, we'll recap Week 5, and we'll get your preview for week number 6 right here on the 4th&GOAL Sports Podcast.
And do me a favor, you're watching this broadcast, even if you're on my personal page watching it, go to 4th&GOAL Sports. Please like and follow. I always post a banner for every show. We have a new show that I produce on Sundays. The banner will be up here in a couple of days. We might be moving the time until when all the afternoon games end. In between that and the Sunday night game, because we did pretty good last week when we had to flex it because the main host, she had to go in early on a Sunday and do work on her day off. So pay attention to the banner. I'll be up this week with the exact time for that show would be kicked off. And whatever time it's going to be, it's going to stay at that time for now on. I'm pretty sure it's going to be in the evening. It seems like it worked out a lot better that way. And other than that, you'll catch me and Dave back here on Tuesdays, every Tuesday through the season. And then through the off season, we usually switch to Sundays because we know everybody misses football on Sunday. So at least we can do in the off season is talk about football on Sundays. But
and don't miss me on Thursdays and also on Sunday.
Yep.
Picks with David on both Yahoo or on YouTube and on Facebook. And I'll post my Picks with David stuff on 4th&GOAL Sports page as well. Thanks for joining us. Thanks a lot again, Chris, for running the show.
No problem, buddy. Can't wait till next week.
See you guys all next time.
All right, guys. Have a good night. We'll see you guys next week. Later.